Hey all, welcome to ShareTrek. This is Raj here. Friends, today I want to talk about CRISPR Therapeutics. We haven't discussed it for a while, and in the last few days you have seen CRISPR Therapeutics zoom in value. Apart from that, what you see behind me is the portfolio of Norges Bank. It's a huge sovereign fund, and they are no stranger to CRISPR Therapeutics. As you will see on the screen here, they have entered and exited out of CRISPR Therapeutics many times, taking their shares held into zero territory and coming back in again. Of late, what I see is that since Q3 of 2023, they have re-entered CRISPR Therapeutics, and their second tranche of purchase in Q4 2022 was somewhere around 443,536 shares, and this continues to add to their stake of all the shares that they are holding, and that means Norges Bank sees something in CRISPR Therapeutics, and that's why they are building up the stake. They have secured 0.52% ownership in the company so far, and that they might have their own reasons. They have their own analysts who analyze various companies, and this move is not a thoughtless move. There is a lot of thought behind this move. With this context, I want to do a quick review of CRISPR stock today. We'll look at everything that we know about CRISPR and see if we can find any reason why we should become an investor in CRISPR, and if so, is it for short term or is it for long term? So that's the kind of inquiry I'm going to make. With that said, let's get started. Welcome back, friends. As you can see on the screen behind me, I have a list of other investors, institutional investors who have invested in CRISPR Therapeutics, and you can see there is a bunch of them: Highline Wealth Partners, Western Pacific, MCF Advisors, so on and so forth. We could make a bigger list, but the point I'm trying to make is that there's a lot of institutional investor interest, and institutional ownership right now stands at approximately 69%, signaling that big money still sees potential in CRISPR Therapeutics despite the recent volatility. Now, I want to also show you the analyst targets so that we can set a background on the basis of which we can do a technical analysis and see what we can gather out there. As you can see on the chart behind me, the analyst sentiment is kind of mixed. You have analysts out here from Bank of America with a price target of 85. I would say that Truist is the most bullish with a target of 120, and the least bullish of them is RBC Capital, looking at sector perform, and 48. So that's a range. Now, if you look at the overall consensus summary, we don't have all the analyst summary out here in the screen just for the sake of keeping it simple, but we have around 11 buy ratings, 9 hold ratings, and 2 sell ratings, and average price target is $73.11, which kind of gives you approximately around 90% upside for CRISPR Therapeutics, and that's quite significant, and that could also be one of the reasons why deep pockets with a longer time frame of investment might be entering into CRISPR Therapeutics. Now, I want to also talk to you about what's happening in the charts. So I'm going to take you to the TradingView platform. So here we are in the TradingView platform, and for a change, I'm looking at 2-hour time frame candles. So each of these candles is a 2-hour candle. I want to see what has happened in the recent time frame for this excitement to come up. And as you can see here, there is a double bottom formation, right? So if I was to make a target for this double bottom, I'm going to be a bit liberal with this target. So if I pull this up and put it on top of the neckline, then I come to the conclusion that we should look at least 40.44 or at least $40 for CRISPR Therapeutics. So most of the gain already happened from 9th April 2025. We didn't have a chance at all because on 9th April, right away, the stock went up. And what coincided with that? It was President Trump saying that he's pushing back tariffs by 90 days. So we never really had a chance to catch this. Those who were plugged into rumors and other things and actually believed them and acted, they went away with a lot of money. Some people really made a good deal of money. But even at this stage, in the morning around 11:30, we had not yet triggered the double bottom. The double bottom got triggered somewhere around I would say 3:30 on the 9th of April, and then it has already gone past at least two resistances by now, and we ended at around $39.30 in the last trading day, which was Friday 11th April 2025. Now from here, I think we hardly have $1.10 or 20 cents to still be gained, and again that is going to be a bit tricky if anyone was to enter at this point of time believing in this double bottom target. We have a little bit of volatility ahead because CRISPR Therapeutics has a high beta. It has a beta of 1.85. What that means is that if the share market moves in a direction by 1 unit, CRISPR Therapeutics moves in the same direction in 1.85 units. So CRISPR Therapeutics is very sensitive to which direction the stock market moves. That's what the beta indicates. And CRISPR Therapeutics has got a high beta. So that's something we have to keep in mind. But on a conservative basis, if you are a short-term trader, you could aim for maybe $1.20 gain when the market opens on Monday. But as I know the way things happen, pre-market buyers would have already pushed the price to that level, and then entering into it becomes a very risky proposition. So with that said, what do we see for CRISPR Therapeutics? Definitely for the long-term holder, it's going to be a very good opportunity. For example, let us look at what people inside CRISPR Therapeutics themselves think. First of all, we have director John Green. He bought around 7,000 shares at $44.85. That means that he spent around $314K of worth of his own money investing in CRISPR Therapeutics share, which is kind of which shows a high level of confidence by an insider who happens to be a director. However, on the other hand, CEO Samarth Kulkarni sold around 18,360 shares at around $55.20, which netted him around $1 million, and that's a 9.66% reduction in his position in CRISPR Therapeutics. He might have done that to meet his personal commitments and expenses because senior executive remuneration is heavily stock-based, so he must have done that just to meet his personal expenses. That's the way I look at insider selling. And overall insider ownership for CRISPR Therapeutics is not that high. It's just 4.0% or 4.10%, something in that range. Institutional ownership is pretty high for CRISPR Therapeutics. That shows a lot of institutional confidence, but at the same time, it's a double-edged sword. If things don't look good for the institutions in other areas. Now, I want to bring this to you specifically because we had the basis state scare, which is what made President Trump push back the tariff by around 90 days. Now, what is the basis scare? It was because our 10-year yields went above 4.5%, and there were hedge funds which were doing some kind of arbitrage trade, and they had to do margin covering. And it became a very difficult situation. Right now, if you notice, our 10-year yields is still around the 4.5% range. So we are not yet out of danger. So if any of these funds have a margin call or something like that, and they need to make money in order to meet their commitments, then I think having a heavy institutional ownership could be a negative for CRISPR in that circumstances, especially with this dollar plunging below, dollar index plunging below $1, and all those things that are happening in the internals of the economy. That seems to be a bit of a risk, in my opinion, for companies where there is heavy institutional ownership, because institutional owners do not think too much before selling smaller stakes. For them, this CRISPR Therapeutics stake is going to be a very small portion of their portfolio. So if they wanted to just cut their losses and retain much more positive areas of their portfolio, this is what they would do. They would just end up selling things like Beam and CRISPR and all that stuff. So please keep that aspect in mind. So I think in terms of final thought, I would say that the large buy-in by Norges Bank and the recent earnings beat that CRISPR has displayed are positives, especially given how battered the stock has been of late. I mean, it went all the way down to $30. Can you imagine CRISPR Therapeutics Therapeutics at $30, right? It's absolutely cheap. It's like looking at Nvidia at $95. So it's very cheap. So I think from that perspective, right, the risk reward looks much more decent rather than buying CRISPR at 40. So at this stage, I think uh, whoever has to buy has already bought it, and probably we missed the bus. That's the way I would look at it. But if someone had a very long term time horizon, dollar cost averaging would not be a bad idea, I suppose. And I think with CRISPR Therapeutics expected to post a loss of 1.26 per share for the current quarter, the focus then becomes, okay, what is their cash runway? So we need to see what their cash runway looks like. How much did they spend now? How much do they propose to spend at a later rate? So overall in this year, like Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4, what is their projection? So that we can get an idea of whether equity dilution is on the card. So we need to know those things. So we'll have to wait for their earnings release, which will come soon, and that will give us some catalyst. As you would see in the chart behind me out here, right, CRISPR Therapeutics has a huge and diversified pipeline. But what I'm thinking is that this pipeline doesn't show me the kind of granularity that I would like to see in the about CRISPR Therapeutics and how they are progressing with their projects. So I'm thinking that if we had a little more granularity, for example, in all these items which are in blue, which is CTX112, CTX131, all the CAR T therapies and the T1D therapy, and we have two of these therapies out here, CTX310 and CTX320. They are all in clinical trial. Now, what does clinical trial mean? Clinical trial means phase 1, phase 1/2, phase 2, phase 3, pivotal studies. It could mean any of those things, right? We don't have that kind of granularity out here. So we don't know how close we are to being able to fill a BLA or how far we are from a BLA. So that's something that I lament. And also, there are so many possibilities, right? If data releases are made on any of these, those could be either positive or negative catalysts. We probably should expect something during the next earnings release, but we don't know when any of those catalysts are going to come and what are they going to be for. Are they going to be for T1D or are they going to be for CAR T, and what stage those therapies are on in the clinical trial, and how far away are they from a BLA. So there is so many possibilities, and we don't know. Therefore, I'm thinking that the potential positive catalysts will all materialize for people who have a very long investment horizon for CRISPR Therapeutics. But if you're someone who is a swing trader or with a short-term objective, I don't think there is much to gain from CRISPR Therapeutics at this point of time, given the overall environment, which is fraught with a whole lot of volatility and risk, and the tariff battle and the geopolitical struggles are just beginning. We are entering into an era where the peaceful open trade kind of environment, which was enabling high productivity, best use of capital, free flow of goods and services, all of that is kind of coming to an end. And we are trying to find the new terms of engagement between various participants and equilibrium in the geopolitics. The contest has just begun, the match between US and China, and European Union might try to become the new US and try to guide the world to a different direction, while China will try to become the next de facto leader. So all these things are happening, and the US political environment itself is becoming a little bit risky, and the US business environment, rule of law, all those things are undergoing a little bit of shakeup. What will it turn out to be at the end of it? Is it going to be better than what it was before? In which case, it's very good for US dollar and the US treasuries as reserve currency. Whereas if it turns out that there is more corruption and the policies, the customs policies and other things are not very clear, and they're arbitrary, flexible, and they can change from time to time depending on what happens at the White House and who gets the ear of the president. All those things can then reduce the sheen of the US, and then China and Europe will have to struggle for world dominance in terms of being the leader for the world. So it's all looking very dicey, and in between that, companies like CRISPR Therapeutics, Beam, Editas, all of these with greenfield projects in cutting edge science, they are going to find it difficult to attract capital. So we have to keep that risk in mind, right? And the key points I would say to watch when we go forward is to look for regulatory updates on Exaccel and any positive news about future pipeline therapies like I think the type 1 diabetes therapy, CTX211. I'm very bullish on that. If it comes through, it's a huge market and it's fully owned by CRISPR Therapeutics. So I think CRISPR Therapeutics should be able to make a lot of money out of that, and overnight the shares can pop. Then, of course, we have the CAR T therapies, which are fully owned, CTX112 and CTX131. Both of them have great potential because they are allogenic, off the shelf. They will be most preferred by patients because they have higher potency, available immediately on requirement, as compared to autologous therapy, where there's a lead time for extracting and preparing the therapy and bringing it back to the patient. So there is all those advantages out there. I mean, don't get me wrong, CRISPR Therapeutics has got a great deal of potential, but as a retiree who is looking at a much more stable portfolio, I think that I have a very limited amount of money for speculation, and I wouldn't speculate on CRISPR Therapeutics at this point of time. But once the overall market environment clears, if I find CRISPR Therapeutics at these attractive levels, which I think is impossible, I would definitely buy. So that's the way I would like to leave it, and I would like to hear from you guys. What do you think about CRISPR Therapeutics? Do you have CRISPR Therapeutics? And just give me your comments so that I can get an idea of what our ShareTrack community is thinking about with regard to CRISPR Therapeutics. With that, my friends, I'd like to bring this video to an end. Thanks and have a great day.